When you hear the words ice caps, you might picture endless frozen deserts, far away and irrelevant to your daily life. But these vast expanses of ice, quiet, cold, and remote, are some of the most powerful forces shaping life on Earth. Let's zoom in. At the very top of the world lies the Arctic, a floating sheet of sea ice that expands and contracts with the seasons. Below, in the southern hemisphere, sits Antarctica, a frozen continent twice the size of Australia, buried under a mountain of ice nearly 2 miles thick. Together, they hold over 99% of all the freshwater ice on the planet. And there's more. Greenland, the world's largest island, is cloaked in a massive ice sheet of its own, melting faster than any time in recorded history. But these aren't just lifeless frozen wastelands. They're planetary thermostats. Sunlight hits their bright white surfaces and bounces back into space, helping to keep Earth cool. It's like nature's built-in reflector, moderating the planet's temperature so that life can thrive. Without them, Earth's balance starts to wobble. The ice caps also hold the keys to sea levels. Locked inside them is enough frozen water to raise oceans by over 66 meters if fully melted. That's enough to drown every coastal city on Earth, but we'll get to that. These ice caps have been around for millions of years, surviving ice ages, warming spells, and massive shifts in Earth's climate. They are time capsules, preserving tiny bubbles of air from ancient atmospheres, holding clues to our planet's past. And right now, they're under threat like never before. So the next time you see footage of a glacier falling into the sea, or hear someone talk about polar melt, don't just picture snow and ice. Picture global systems in motion. Picture entire weather patterns, ecosystems, and coastlines held together by these frozen giants. Because once they're gone, nothing stays the same. The ice caps are ancient, resilient, and massive. But even they have a breaking point, and we're pushing them toward it faster than ever before. So why are they melting? The answer begins with heat. More specifically, carbon dioxide. For over a century, humans have been burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, to power our cars, cities, and industries. And every ton of fuel burned releases invisible gases into the atmosphere, building up like a thick blanket around the planet. That blanket traps heat, and Earth, a planet finely tuned by millions of years of natural balance, is now warming at a rate it has never seen before. Since the late 1800s, global temperatures have risen by more than 1.2 degrees Celsius. That might not sound like much, but in the world of climate science, it's massive. It's the difference between stability and the unraveling of systems we depend on. The Arctic is heating up 4 times faster than the global average. That's not just a statistic, that's a warning siren. But it gets worse. As ice melts, it reveals darker land or ocean beneath it. And here's the catch. Dark surfaces absorb sunlight instead of reflecting it. This leads to more warming, which melts more ice, revealing more dark surfaces. This is called the albedo effect, and it's a vicious feedback loop. It's like nature is accelerating its own collapse. And it's not just about temperature. Ocean currents, wind patterns, even the jet stream are all being thrown out of sync as polar regions destabilize. The poles may be far away, but their influence is planetary. All right, let's push the timeline forward. Imagine every last glacier, every frozen plain in the Arctic, Greenland, and Antarctica, gone. All of it melted. What does the world look like now? Brace yourself. The oceans have risen by over 66 meters, more than 200 feet. This isn't ankle-deep flooding. This is entire cities disappearing beneath the waves. New York City, gone. London, submerged. Shanghai, Mumbai, Miami, Bangkok, Tokyo, Amsterdam, Buenos Aires, New Orleans, erased from the map. We're not talking about isolated disasters. This is a global redraw of coastlines, the kind you'd see in a dystopian novel, except this wouldn't be fiction. More than 2 billion people live in coastal areas. That's nearly a third of humanity. Where do they go when their homes are swallowed by the sea? Mass migration begins. Country after country struggles to absorb the displaced. Political borders blur and tensions rise. Nations collapse under the pressure. Refugee crises multiply. Governments fall. It gets worse. Countries like Bangladesh, already densely populated and low-lying, vanish almost entirely. Island nations like the Maldives, Tuvalu, and Kiribati, they're not just underwater. They're wiped from existence. Entire cultures, languages, histories, families become waterlogged memories. And it doesn't stop with the land. As the fresh water from the ice caps floods into the oceans, it dilutes and disrupts crucial ocean currents, like the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, the engine behind weather systems across North America and Europe. Without it, tropical regions bake in brutal heat, while once temperate zones plunge into deep freezes. Places that were once fertile and green turn to desert. Other regions, once cold and quiet, now suffer from floods and chaotic storms. And fresh water, our most vital resource, becomes scarce. As glaciers that once fed rivers and lakes disappear, so do the water supplies for billions of people. Entire agricultural regions collapse, crops fail, food prices soar, and hunger spreads like wildfire. And let's not forget disease. Warmer waters and flooded cities become breeding grounds for pathogens, and with global systems strained to their limits, pandemics flourish in the chaos. This isn't the distant future. This is what happens if we let the ice caps disappear completely. The world doesn't just change, it drowns. It fractures, it burns. But climate isn't done yet. The real storm is only beginning, in the skies, in the oceans, and in the balance of life itself. So, the ice is gone. The seas have swallowed the coasts. But what happens to the rest of the world? You might think, okay, I don't live near the ocean, I'm safe. Not quite. When the ice caps melt, the planet doesn't just flood, it spins into chaos. First, the ocean currents stop behaving. One of the most important is the Gulf Stream, a vast underwater conveyor belt that moves warm water from the tropics toward Europe and North America, regulating weather and seasons across the globe. Without the cold, salty push of polar waters, the Gulf Stream slows down or collapses entirely. And when that happens, Europe plunges into bitter, storm-ridden winters. West Africa suffers brutal droughts. South America sees its rainforests wither. And hurricanes in the Atlantic? They grow stronger, larger, and far more destructive. Next comes the jet stream, a high-altitude river of air that guides storm systems and weather patterns. As the poles warm, the jet stream weakens and wobbles like a drunken snake, trapping regions in endless heat waves, floods, or cold snaps. Think of it as nature's GPS going haywire. Weather becomes unrecognizable. Wildfires rage across continents, no longer seasonal but constant. Storms level cities with winds once thought impossible. Torrential rains flood regions that once begged for water, while fertile farmland turns to dust. And ecosystems, they begin to collapse under the pressure. Coral reefs, already battered by rising temperatures and acidity, vanish completely. Fisheries collapse. Species that once thrived in cold climates, penguins, polar bears, seals, face extinction. But so do countless species further down the food chain, causing ripple effects everywhere. Nowhere is untouched. Now let's talk about us. Humans, families, communities, nations. What does a world without ice really mean for the people who live in it? It means loss. Massive, unimaginable loss. Cities gone underwater don't just mean lost buildings. They mean lost homes, lost memories, lost identities. Entire generations of people become climate refugees, not because of war or politics, but because the land itself has vanished. Imagine millions of people moving inland all at once, not just from one country, but from hundreds. Borders tighten, resources dwindle, nations fight over what's left. And when governments can't cope, things start to break down. We'll see the rise of climate-driven conflict. Wars not over oil, but over water, land, food, and survival. Nations that once thrived now collapse under the pressure of constant crisis. Power shifts, alliances fracture, chaos fills the void. But even beyond the politics, there's the emotional toll. Imagine watching your hometown disappear. The streets you grew up on, gone. The graves of your ancestors, the tree you carved your name into, the schools, the markets, the memories, underwater. What happens to culture when it has no home? What happens to identity when the land it's rooted in no longer exists? This is not science fiction. It's not some far-off apocalypse. This is the human cost of melting ice. And unless we act, it will be our future, our children's reality, our legacy. So is this how the story ends? Flooded cities, broken nations, a planet in chaos? No, not yet. Because here's the truth. We still have a choice. The complete melting of the ice caps is not inevitable. It's a future we're racing toward, yes, but it's also a future we can still avoid. But we have to act fast, and we have to act together. It starts with the one thing driving this disaster: carbon emissions. Every ton of CO2 we release into the atmosphere brings us closer to collapse. But every ton we don't release, that's a step back from the edge. And the good news? We already have the tools. Renewable energy, solar, wind, hydro, is cheaper and more powerful than ever before. Electric transportation, energy-efficient buildings, sustainable agriculture, they're not futuristic dreams anymore. They're happening right now. Reforestation can suck carbon out of the sky. Clean technology can replace dirty industries. Global cooperation, like the Paris Agreement, can hold nations accountable. But it takes more than innovation. It takes will. It means voting for leaders who take climate seriously. It means changing the way we build, eat, move, consume. It means pressure from citizens, from students, from everyone. And yes, it means sacrifice, but far less than the sacrifice of losing entire continents to water and war. We are the first generation to fully understand the consequences, and the last generation with the power to stop them. The ice is melting. The warnings are clear. The clock is ticking. But the future isn't written in glaciers. It's written in our choices, right now. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe. And if you want curious questions answered, have a look at some of our other videos.